And we're going to get started with our meeting today. I am trying to watch the chat as I go through this. So if you have a question and you want to put something in the chat, feel free to do that. And like I said, I'll try and remember to watch it, and I'll get to those as I can. But we'll get started. Like I said, hopefully it's going to be a quick meeting today, so you can get back to doing other things. But like I said, I'm excited to see you all. I hope that you had a wonderful summer and that you came back feeling refreshed and that your school year has started off without a hitch and it's going well. So today, as I mentioned in the email, we have our annual financial overview for 2023. We'd like to do this once a year, and today we're just going to talk at a high level about all things financial, and hopefully just remind you of some things that you may not have thought of for a while, and I'm hoping that it's useful to you. And then at the end, we're going to hopefully have some time that we will have the time, but hopefully we can do a chat more than you listening to me, just to kind of talk about what it is that you guys want to see this year in your trainings. I did send out a survey, and the last time I checked, I was the only one who answered it, and I answered it just because I was worried it wasn't working. So I know it's working, so nobody put anything in, so we'll try and chat about it today. So let's get started. So first of all, we are going to talk a little bit about, sorry, I always have hit in our financial overview. We are going to start out by talking about the importance of financial oversight at your charter school. We'll talk a little bit about the role of us as the authorizer. I do want to say that I recognize that there could be one or two of you here that don't have the SCSB as their authorizer. So for the most part, you can just apply these things to your authorizer. There are a couple of things in here that will be SCSB specific, but for the most part, you could apply them to your authorizer as well. And then we'll talk about the role of you as a business administrator that you play in helping with that financial oversight. So let's start with the importance of financial oversight. Financial oversight helps ensure the responsible management of the school's financial resources. And not only that, but it also helps promote the long-term fiscal health of your schools, and that helps ensure the sustainability of your school. So that's why it's important, because you guys are doing great things. We want to make sure that you continue to do those great things in the future. As your authorizer, what we do is we monitor the financial performance of the charter schools to help ensure the public that your schools are operating with financial integrity and that you're adhering to the legal and regulatory requirements that you need to work within. And also, in addition to that, we want to provide technical assistance and support. And we do this to help you improve your financial management. And we do this by providing trainings like this one. We do have there are other resources that we can connect you with as well, like the people here at USBE, or we could also help connect you with the associations who might have things that are available that would be helpful to you also, and any guidance you need. If you have questions, please make sure you're calling and asking. We're happy to field any questions we have, and if we don't know the answer, we will do our best to make sure that we get a good answer from you wherever that might come from. And then you as a business administrator are instrumental, obviously, in maintaining the fiscal health of your schools. You are managing those financial operations, and then you're providing accurate financial information to all of your stakeholders. And then you as a business administrator are very instrumental in helping implement the internal controls at your school. And as charter schools here in Utah, you do work within a regulatory framework, and there are some compliance requirements that you need to work within as well or meet. We'll start off by talking about your authorizer. Your authorizer is the one that establishes the policies related to the establishment, operation, and oversight of your charter schools. They're going to make sure that you are complying with the terms of your charter agreement that you have. It's a contract between you and your authorizer, and they're going to make sure that you are complying with those terms of that contract. Also, you have the state of Utah. They have rules regarding education, procurement, open and public meetings, and other things that you need to be aware of, because you need to be in compliance with all of those things. So it's important that you know and understand what those are. You also have the USBE administrative rules. The USBE administrative rules are a little different than Utah code in that you can ask for a waiver from an administrative rule if it's necessary. It's not done very often, but if you find that there is a rule that's impeding your ability to operate your school the way it was intended to operate, then you do have that option of asking for those waivers from those administrative rules. Also, there are other compliance obligations that are put on you, such as your financial audits that you need to have done every year. There are reporting deadlines that you need to make sure that you're meeting. And there are other federal and state requirements that you need to make sure that you understand so that you can ensure that you're meeting those obligations as well. And let's talk a little bit about financial statements. You do have many, and there are many components besides your basic financial statements that you have to make sure that you're preparing. You have your basic financial statements, like your statement of net position, statement of activities, balance sheet, statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. But then you have those other things that you need to make sure that you're really doing a good job of making sure it's painting an accurate picture of what's going on at your school, like your notes, your supplementary information, your management discussion and analysis, and your budget comparison. They're all very important to make sure that they are as accurate as possible and are painting that good picture, because even for us at the SCSB, when we do your annual reviews, your comprehensive reviews, we're looking at all aspects of this when we're looking at that financial piece. So each one of these elements of your financial statements is very important. And then let's talk about a little bit about your revenue sources and budgeting for those revenue sources. So the biggest revenue source, obviously, that you have is your government funding. This comes in the form of local, state, and federal. The local, kind of maybe not so much thinking of it as federal funding, because you don't have those state taxes that are levied for you, so you don't really get it there, but kind of to think of it as the money that's coming from your student, like your student fees. And if you have a lunch program, then the student money that's coming in from paying for their lunches, those kind of things would be your local government funding, kind of. Then your state funding, your biggest piece is your minimum school program and the different aspects of that. And you need to understand what those are and how you can use those funds as well, because there are some that are more restricted than others with that state funding. And then you have your federal funding. These would be things like your IDEA special education funds, your Title I or your title program funds in general. And then also you would have your federal portion of your lunch program. So these are all the elements of your local or your government funding. There are other things, but that's the bulk of it. And then you have opportunities to get grants. Grants can be very important to your school to be able to do all the great things you want to do. However, when you're seeking out grants, one thing that's very important to know is grant funding is great if you get it, but there's no guarantee that you might get it again next year. So as you're planning for that grants, try and kind of make that be the icing on the cake. Try to operate within the framework of your governmental sources as much as you can. And anything on top of that is kind of like, okay, this is something extra we can do, or money we can put towards something we're working toward in a future. So just kind of try and think about that, to operate as much as you can within your government funding, and look at these kind of funds as sources that you can use to enhance your programs. If you are looking into grants, a great place to start is online. I actually did a little looking into this myself, and I started kind of with a very narrow picture of what I was looking for. I was looking for charter school grants, and I found some there. Then I looked into education and then teacher grants. And there are a lot that are there. But when you're looking at grants, I want you to keep in mind that you are a nonprofit organization. So you can apply for anything that a nonprofit organization can apply for, as long as you meet the requirements. So don't just limit yourself to educational grants. Also, there are private donations that are out there that you can look into. You would get those private donations through your fundraising efforts. You can inquire about matching gifts from corporations. Just talk with your stakeholders, your parents, see if they have an employer who offers matching funds, and see if they would be willing to direct that money your way. There are also corporate donations that you can receive that aren't done necessarily through grants, or you can just go out and solicit the corporation yourself if you want. There may be some that are specific that they have donations, but it doesn't hurt to go and do the ask. Also, when you're thinking about asking for private donations, don't limit yourself to asking for money. If you have a need and you see a corporation that you think could fulfill that need, go ahead and ask them if they have in-kind donations that they would be willing to give you. Maybe they could do some volunteer work at your school. Maybe they could do some mentoring for your students or your teachers. Just try and keep, when you're going out and you're seeking these kind of donations, keep it broad. Don't just narrow it down to a focus. Broaden your horizons as much as you can, and don't be afraid of the ask. The worst that could happen is they could tell you no, and if they tell you no, you didn't have it before, you don't have it now. Your situation really has not changed, so don't be afraid to ask. And then it's important to know what these sources are that are coming in and what you're expecting, because obviously this is how you're going to form your budget. And some key things to keep in mind. I know you've already gone through the budgeting process for this year, but as you're refining it and thinking about it throughout the school year, some things to keep in mind are your budgeting process should be collaborative and should have input from all of your stakeholders, such as your administration, your governing board, as well as your finance team. And remember, when you're budgeting, it's essential to maintain accuracy and transparency. And also it's important to allow for some flexibility in your budget to help you effectively manage the school's financial resources. And because that's going to help you achieve the school's educational goals, which is what we want to make sure happens, right? Some things to keep in mind as you're thinking about all things finances for charter schools is the importance of expense management and cost controls. These are crucial to help ensure the efficient use of your resources and to help maintain your financial stability as a school. Some key elements to help you in that effective expense management is their tools and strategies. These would include things like tracking your transactions and where your money's going, analyzing what's going on and how your funds are being utilized, and then just in general to help you control your expenses. If you're getting close to what you budgeted for a category, it may be time to step back and look at, okay, maybe we need to curb our spending in this category. And then also your expense categories are extremely important. Some of your larger categories are your personnel, your facilities, your curriculum, and your administrative costs. And all of these categories you have to balance them around each other. Sometimes if like you value as a school, you value paying your teachers high salaries so you can get the best teachers possible, then you may have to sacrifice a little bit in your building and what you're doing there, or maybe in what your technological needs are and how you're utilizing what you have available. So these are important to know because there's a play and a balancing of them that you need to do so you need to determine what your priorities are and balance these categories off of one another. You also want to look for opportunities for cost savings. I know, just as an example of a school that I used to work with in my old position, there was a school that operated out of a very old building, and it had 2 levels, and they had their utility costs were just skyrocketing and out of control. And they found that if they were able to close off that second level and just operate the school on the first level, that there was a really tremendous cost savings for them in that, because they weren't having to heat and cool that second floor, and that saved them quite a bit of money. So just look for opportunities. That's just one easy example, utilities, but look for other cost saving opportunities that you have for your school as well. There are many. Maybe looking at your vendors and seeing if you can find a better price somewhere else on something that your school uses quite often. So just look for those. All right, financial analysis and key for performance indicators. So this is where I am going to get a little bit specific to the USBE itself, or I'm not the USBE, the SCSB, forgive me. So the SCSB has what's called a Charter School Financial Accountability Framework that they use when they're doing your comprehensive reviews as well as your annual reviews. And there are key performance indicators that they look for in the finance area. We're going to talk about those in just a minute, but these are what they use to help them, or to help us gauge your financial health as a school, to let us know if maybe there's something that looks a little bit out of whack, and see if we can figure out what it is. And when we were talking about your financial statements, I was telling you that all of those elements in your financial statements we look at. So if we are calculating a financial metric, which is what we call them, and we find that it's not quite meeting the standard, then we're going to delve deeper and look at your notes and look at your MD&A and just see what other information we can get from your financial statements to see if we can find a reason why this particular metric isn't in line with what our expectation for it is. And if you know what these financial metrics are, and they are on our website if you want to go and look at them, and like I said, we're going to talk about them in a minute. But if you know what these are and you kind of are calculating them for yourselves throughout the year and looking at where you are, then that can help you as you're making decisions for your school and as you're doing your strategic planning, just to know how well you're doing on those finance indicators, and to think about, okay, where do we have some room to do some extra things, and where do we maybe need to scale back this year just because we don't have the funds for it. So just think about that as you're making your decisions for your school throughout the year. So I said I'd talk about what those financial metrics are. The ones that we use at the SCSB are listed here. There's the annual cash flow. This is something we're going to look at, and we definitely want to see that your cash is generally trending towards a positive cash flow year over year. We recognize there will be years when it won't, where you'll be using some of that money you've been saving for what it was saved for. But in general, we want to see that cash flow is looking positive. Also, your change in that position, we want to see, again, that is in a positive position and it's trending that way. Again, we recognize there will be times when it won't, but we generally want to see it trending towards the positive. Your debt service coverage ratio, there are a lot of you that have bonds, and so you know that there's a ratio that is expected by your bondholder that you maintain, and this just lets the bondholder know that you're able to pay your debts as they're coming due. So this is an important one to make sure you know and understand and are holding to those ratios, especially if you have a bondholder who has an expectation on you. The debt to asset ratio, this just kind of tells us basically if you were to have to liquidate for any reason, which we don't anticipate that you would, but it's good to know that if that were to happen, that you would have enough assets that you could liquidate, that you could cover all of your debt. And then your facility costs, we look at this. What we'd like to see here is that you are no higher than 20% of your revenue is going to your facility costs. If your facility costs get out of whack, they can be difficult to bring back into line. And if they are out of balance, then your other things are going to suffer, like the money that you're paying out on your personnel and the money that you're spending for your curriculum. And those wonderful things that you're trying to do for your school may get a lot harder. So really make sure that you're watching what is going out for your facility costs and you're keeping it in line. Like I said, our goal is that it be 25% or less, but I definitely would recommend that you trend toward the less. The lesser side of that is as low as you can get it. I would even recommend 18 might be a good place to be. I kind of looked into it to see what other schools were doing, and 18 seemed to be a good amount, because like I said, if those get out of whack, that can really affect what's going on in your school. Your total margin, this is just measures the percentage of your revenue that you're maintaining in your school or that you maintained in your school for the year. Again, this one is something that we would like to see trending towards a positive. A good rule of thumb here is if you're having a year, it's a good year and you haven't had any extra costs or anything that you've had to put money towards during the year, then a 5% goal here would be a good amount to maintain, so that when you do have those things come up, you have the funds to cover them. Unrestricted days on cash on hand. This is where, so we look at this at June 30th, and we are basically looking to see at June 30th, what was your cash? And then we subtract from that what portion of that cash was designated as restricted. And we look at that, and our goal is that you have, well, the standard is that you have 30 days cash on hand that means you can cover 30 days of your expenses without having to have any new cash inflow into your school. I definitely would recommend that you get that much higher. That is the standard, but at a minimum, I would recommend 90 days, because if you only have 30 and you have an expense come up that's large, like one that I've seen a lot of in my years of working with schools, is the HVA system seems to be something that costs schools a lot of money. So if that system goes down, it's very expensive to maintain. And if you don't have the money on hand, that could be a problem. So there is the standard, but I would definitely recommend that you go above the standard if you can at all. Alrighty. Let's talk a little bit about financial risk management. This is a really big piece of your financial stability for your school. And I think we kind of tend to just forget about it. I know that I did. You just go through your daily tasks and you do them, and you kind of forget to think through everything that could come up. So in order to effectively manage your risks, your school really needs to establish a risk management framework. And that should include risk assessment, internal controls, contingency planning, monitoring, and your reporting. All of these are aspects of financial risk management. Your boards and your administration really need to work collaboratively to develop and implement these risk management strategies, and you want to make sure that they align with the mission and financial objectives of your school. Some potential risks that you can face as a charter school are funding uncertainties. Like, you never know what's going to happen with the WPU. It does, like, we had a really good, this year there was a really high increase, but you never know what it's going to be next year. So these things you need to keep in mind if your expenses are outpacing your increases, or your increases in your expenses are outpacing your increases in your WPU and your other funding. You need to be aware that some decision making will need to be made. Enrollment fluctuations. We all heard last year that the amount of kindergartners that came in this year were expected to be lower than the seniors that graduated last year. So we know that people aren't having as many babies, and we don't know what the future holds, how this is going to turn out. So it's something you need to keep in mind and kind of plan for what those unexpected enrollment changes may be. And there's always budget constraints. You have a finite amount of money that you need to work with, and you need to use it in the best way possible and do that balancing that we talked about earlier. And there are compliance challenges. They're always changing. There's always new compliance coming up, and you need to make sure that you have the resources available to make sure that you're meeting all those compliance issues or requirements that you need to meet. Also, there are internal control mechanisms and practices that you need to make sure you're putting in place so that you can help mitigate these risks as they come up. And we also need them in place to make sure that we're preventing fraud and to help us ensure that our financial accountability, that what we are putting in those financial statements is accurate for our stakeholders so that they can use that information effectively. There are several internal control procedures that are effective, that are available to you. It's a good idea to make sure you know what those procedures are that are available to you. Some of these include, but they're not limited to, the idea of segregation of duties, which I'm sure you all know very well. How you're doing your authorizations and approvals, that's a control procedure. And then making sure you're doing regular reconciliations to help make sure that you're not missing anything that you're not missing any transactions or anything else that might have been incorrectly recorded, so that we can provide an accurate picture of what your school finances actually are. All right, and then there is the idea of collaboration and support. So first of all, you have your authorizer. As I said in the beginning, we are here to support you in any way that you need. We just need to know what you need. So feel free to reach out to us with anything. As they say, the only dumb question we believe in is the one that you don't ask. And also, it's you asking us questions, that's job security, right? That helps keep us busy. So we entertain anything that you have to ask. We will be more than happy to help you with it. We also have resources to provide you with, such as your monthly BA meetings. There are the associations that have resources that are available to you too, so reach out to them. I know that the UACPS does a lot of trainings for you, and they also have, like, for policies, if you're still working on getting the best policies in place, they have some model policies that you can look at that might help you with that. Hopefully you're done with that, but if you just kind of feel like you want to revisit them and make sure that they're all that they could be, that they're a good resource with model policies that you can look at. Also, I recommend that you look at other schools' policies if you're working on that and see what they have. But off of the policy subject, okay. USBE also has spring and fall financial trainings. Those are really good, and I get a lot out of those. So I hope you make sure that you attend those as well. Also, if you're a new BA, generally in January, they do a new BA training as well that I recommend that you look into. And then if you have issues and you just don't know what to do, don't be afraid to reach out to your colleagues and counterparts at the other schools. I would hope that you see each other as colleagues and not as competition. And if there are a lot of you that have been around for a long time, and I would hope that we could feel like you could reach out to them and they would be more than willing, I hope, would be my hope, to help you with anything that you need help with, and that we could be as supported to each other as possible. And with that, that actually ends our presentation part today. I told you that it was going to be short, so I hope it was helpful. But I'd also like to talk to you about our training schedule. So I did send out, well, on the first initial email for this meeting, I put a little survey link there, which the last time I looked, nobody had responded to. I actually went and responded to it just to make sure it was working. So there was my response, and that was all. But that's okay if you didn't look at it. I'm hoping today that maybe we could chat a little bit about what you would like to have, because I do want to be responsive to you. So if you would like to put something in the chat box or just unmute, I'm happy to have you do that as well. But I'd really like to hear from you what you would like to have for what you would like to be trained on and hear about this year. I did kind of put the schedule here. There are a few things in the schedule because we do take June and July off for summer break. And then obviously we had our August meeting, and in November is generally when the fall finance training with USBE is. So we don't have a training then. And May would be your spring finance training. So of course we wouldn't have a meeting then. And then December is always I kind of like to get your feedback because December is a busy time. So we have options where we could have an in-person get together with a short training, a short online meeting, we could have a full meeting, or we could just cancel it all together and you could enjoy your season. It's something we don't need to decide right away, but it's something I wanted you to keep in mind as you're thinking about what you would like to see. And I did want to mention again, there is that USBE new BA training in January, generally in January. We will still be having a meeting for the BAs, but for those of you that are new, I just want to once again make sure that you know about it, because that's a good place to get some good information. We also have a land trust training that is probably going to take place. There is a new rule that's being proposed, and if that new rule goes into effect, it is going to change something where the BAs would actually be so for the land trust, if the school, your charter school doesn't have a separate council, but the board acts as the land trust council, then there needs to be 2 approvals for your plan. Generally, the second approval would be the authorizer in that situation. And we're trying to get this out of the hands of the authorizer because we just don't have the knowledge of what your school needs to be the one to really do that approval. So the new rule will propose that the BA do that. So at some point we will be having that land trust training, and I would recommend all of you come to that just because it is so important. And excuse me for a second. And then I did put some possible topics in there. We could invite departments to come in and do all things financial. So we could invite SPED to just come and give an all things financial with regard to SPED presentation. Those other 2, internal control, financial risk management, we could actually have internal audit, ask them if they would like to come in and just expand on those for you and just kind of give you a refresher of what all that entails. We could do a budgeting training if you want help on budgeting, just whatever you want. I want to be responsive to you. You know better what you need than I do. I can come up with things, but I would rather it be something that you really want and that would be helpful to you. And so far we don't have anything in the chat that I see. So if anybody would just like to shout something out, that'd be awesome. If you have something you have in mind. I can see that you guys are there, but you're so quiet. All right. Well, I'm gonna stop sharing and just if you don't, we have 2. Okay, let's see what we have in the chat. Best practices for budgeting, great. A SPED discussion, cancel December's meeting. I like it. And okay, yeah. Utah grants, good idea. Good idea. All right. I'm glad to see that you are there. Not that I just see your names, but that you really are listening. So thank you for that. I always worry. All right. Well, if we don't have any more, like I said, short and sweet, I hope it was helpful and just at least, if nothing else, just gave you some things to think about. Because like I said, sometimes you get going rote and you forget that, oh yeah, maybe I should evaluate my internal control and see if I can patch some holes or make it a little better. So thank you guys for joining me. I appreciate your attention. You're all great, and I look forward to seeing you at our next meeting, and I'll look into putting some of these suggestions in place that you have given me, and I appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.